Yo, Tripolar Bear, we're going to talk about how you can price check entire tabs worth of gear and how to price check very specific things because this will come up things like Watcher's Eyes, corruptions on jewels, maybe like a good weapon or something along those lines. So let's start out with a stash tab, all right? This is what I had left over when I was doing some 100% delirious testing. Now you can be farming Faldos, you could do essence farming somewhere, and a lot of that stuff kind of gets affinitied to somewhere else. But as you can see, there is a lot of leftover things here. So normally, I will grab a quad tab. I'll have all my affinities set up. So of course, all the currency goes here and whatnot. And what I'm left over with is a bunch of random rare pieces, right? We have jewels, rings, clusters, etc. So let's start out with a cluster jewel for a single example, but for our entire tab here, what I like to do very quickly is I just set each of these tabs to about 1 exalt, or if I'm doing some really juicy stuff, I'll kind of just start at 2. It doesn't really matter, just something that is kind of absurdly high. So that if I do have something good, right, if someone's PMing me for a 1 exalt item, that's a little bit suspicious because I just listed it. If they hit me up right away, if any of these items here, if someone pings me for 1x right away, I'll know that I need to individually price check this item. Otherwise, I'll fill this tab with a bunch of random rare gear and I'll move it down the line here. You see I have a bunch of these other quad tabs and whatnot, and I'll move this one, just about into the start here, and then I'll bring it down to 100 chaos as I fill another tab. So let's say I just filled that 100 deli one. Now I'll take my 100 chaos down and I'll do 80, or most of the time I'll just go 50, right? I'll take my entire quad tabs, I'll price everything in bulk. And if someone PMs me right away while I'm doing these maps, for example, then I individually price it. Otherwise, every single thing in this tab I've not looked at. I don't look at any of the rings, any of the clusters. I don't look at a single thing that I get unless I get PM'd for it. And then I'll kind of price check it if it was really fast, or else, if it's in these 30C tabs, right? These 30C tabs went from 1 exalt to 100 chaos to 50, and now they're at 30. If something's in here, it's probably worth about 30 chaos at this point. And I'll bring these down all the way until I don't want to do trades anymore, somewhere around 20 or 10 chaos. These smaller trades, for me personally, I don't want to do, 3 or 5 chaos trades, except at the very start of the league. Now that we're kind of getting into it, I can spend less time trading for a lot of small items and do a lot more, fun stuff like clearing maps. But for example, all right, I had the 100 daily tab doing some juicy stuff. I got a ping. I got 2 whispers, let's pretend, for this cluster jewel right away. So let's get our trade macro. This is going to be awaken trade here. Now you can find this down in the description. Super easy to set up. Pretty much you just have to set your league to ultimatum, and you might not even have to do that. It might be default, but if you just download it, run it as administrator, press Control Alt D, and you'll have this little menu come up. And this makes it so easy to price check things. So for a cluster jewel example, it's 8 passives, so we set it min 8, max 8. I didn't really have to do that. And then for cluster jewels, very important, you press item level here. So now we can see it's probably worth about 20. If I want to sell it a little bit faster, I can go 15 or lower, although this guy's had that up for a little while there. And if you want, you can specify even a little bit more, although this is just a magic jewel with only Doriani's lesson, so it probably won't be 40, but that is something you can do. Another very useful thing here is when you click all of this stuff, and it searches here, you can click this little expansion here, this little arrow out, and it'll open a tab in your browser. If you click this one, it opens some kind of pseudo tab that's like kind of in the game, and then you can escape out and you're still in the game, right? This is not my browser. If I did it like this, it would open it up to my browser, and that's pretty cool because now it has everything selected, right? This is probably the easiest way to get your cluster jewel searches up and ready here. by just, Control-Alt-D'ing and opening there, right? It's non-unique, large cluster. It has 8 passives, elemental damage, and then you can see all of this stuff here, right? These are all about 2 mods. Some of these are 1 mod Dorianis, so I might be able to sell this for 40 or some odd chaos, right? So let's go ahead, let's augment it, and then let's regal it. And then look at that. Now we have 2 mods. So we can even specify even harder now. So we have 2 mods on an 8 passive elemental with Sadist or Prismatic Heart and Dorianis. So now that's like 65 chaos, right? So now we can go ahead. I want to sell it a little bit fast, so let's go ahead and do 60. That is a pretty easy, and it's sort of self-explanatory with the cluster jewels, right? They're very easy. But how about something like a Watcher's Eye? So you get a Watcher's Eye to drop. These are actually very easy. I've had a lot of questions on how to price Watcher's Eye. It's super easy with the Awaken Trade macro. So you go ahead and you do Control-Alt-D again. And the easiest way for me to do this, you don't even have to think about what mods would work together, because sometimes, you won't really know, right? You're going to be unfamiliar with, like, how good Impale builds are, or, what kind of cast on crit builds are using which ones, right? It's going to have like attack speed with precision, and then some other, it's some random stuff sometimes. So I'll just go ahead and I'll click one of these mods, right? Maybe 45C for that one for just attack damage. I'll do 2 of them. All right. So we have 110 and then 4 exalts. All right. So maybe attack damage with precision and crit strike on conk ground is worth something. And then I'll go ahead and I'll unclick that one and I'll click this one. All right. Maybe 5 exalts, like maybe 5 exalts for this. It's listed 17 hours ago. Let's see. How about we do these 2? All right. So now we've got something a little bit, there's 4 of these, right? 11, 12, 39, and 90. So maybe, if you want to sell it pretty fast, I could list it at, 10 exalts or something like that. All 3 of these 3 mods, it's going to be really, really specific. Generally, something that has 3 Watcher's Eye mods is either like going to be, the 3rd mod is going to be useless, or it's going to be like insanely expensive. So that's something you kind of have to think about here. Just making sure that you don't have 3 Watcher Eye mods that all line up. If you have like triple Herald, or triple Hatred, or triple what is it? Oh god, it's the Impale one. All right, something like that. It's the Pride, triple Pride, Watcher's Eye. If you get some Impale stuff on Impale stuff, right? If you get like 3 cold, if you get, when it's triple of one thing, it can be really spicy. And then it's generally hard to price check because there's not going to be too many up. So for something like that, if you do get a triple one, like let's say, for example, this was a good example of that. I would go to any instead of online only and see, if there's any that are exactly like this. And then look at that. I mean, that's just me right there. I don't know why it's saying I'm offline. I mean, I'm obviously online. But that is an example of Watcher's Eye and whatnot. You kind of just click around, see what you can price it at. And with Watcher's Eyes and stuff like this, right? Throughout the day when I'm playing today, it's at 15. In an hour, I'll bring it down to 13 or 12. After, a little bit more, I might bring it down to 10 and kind of just sit there, right? With all of this stuff, the key to pricing all of your items is going to be letting the market kind of decide exactly the price of your items, right? If my item's worth 1 exalt in this tab, someone will whisper me to buy an item that I have in here for 1 exalt. And if it's not, nobody will whisper me, and so I bring the price down. And that is kind of how we're going to take care of all of our pricings, right? If this Watcher's Eye is worth 15, someone will message me eventually for 15 exalts. If it's not, though, I'm going to have to bring the price down until someone decides that it is worth that much. Another example here. So there's some kind of specific things where if you have good rolls, it's very valuable. So I have one good example here. Now, it's a Quicksilver Flask, right? How expensive can a Quicksilver Flask be? Well, this is Alchemist's Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. Very famous. It gives you lots of move speed. And it has a perfect increased movement speed during Flask Effect mod on there, right? 20 to 30. It has the 30% alongside that mod. So I'm going to click Increase Effect, Reduce Duration, and I'm going to click this. Now, this is important. I have the 30 roll, but it is auto-filled to 27. So I will change that to be 30. Now it's going to be 60 chaos, 150, or 1 exalt across the board. And like I said, we can open up all of these, see all of these in our trade window here. Everybody has, these perfect flasks here. And it seems like it's about 1 exalt, with this guy maybe lowballing, maybe trying to price fix. It's really hard to determine if he's going less than half, but maybe these aren't all worth 1 exalt, but maybe they are. I'm okay with just sitting at 1 exalt for a little while. Stuff like synthesized implicits like I have here, you might get a very, very good one. Generally, if you are spammed 2 times in succession after putting an item into your stash tab, your item is probably much more valuable than, the buyer would like you to think. So, if you get spammed for something, right, you put it in a 100 chaos tab, I got spammed for this ring, for example. Well, let's see. All right, it's a synthesized implicit, right? These rolls are not very important. Accuracy, it's got nice resistance, okay? That's cool, but the rolls here aren't going to be what's important about the ring. It's going to be this implicit modifier, right? You can see it's synthesized. It's kind of got like a cool glowy background here. It's got the little synthesis implicit to the left and the right of the name. That is what's important about this ring. So I'm going to unclick this total resistance, and I will click this determination aura effect. Now this is telling me it's about 5 chaos, 10 chaos maybe. And if I click the item level, which most of the time you do want to on these rare bases and whatnot, item level is important. It goes to 10C or something like that, right? So if I got spammed for a really good synthesized implicit, this is how you kind of price check. Now, this was not a good example. I just didn't have any good synthesized implicits laying around. But, if you have something like, I don't know, power charge or, anything like that, that is the easiest way to price check them, right? This is going to be, a very easy, maybe 10 chaos trade. Something along those lines, right? You could do exactly the same with uniques that you've corrupted, right? So you can kind of like click the rolls here if you want. You can set about whatever resistance you had, whatever life you had, and then this exact corruption. So maybe like 60 chaos, probably a little bit less because nobody's bought that guy's item for a few days. There are some other kind of good examples in these rings. Stuff like these rings, you kind of just click these two, check your implicits. These aren't really too crazy. And then you can kind of search, right? It's going to be a 5 chaos ring because it has Agony Crawler damage and chaos damage while affected by Herald of Agony. So stuff like that is very, very, very easy to price check. Clusters I find are super easy. But what becomes a little bit difficult is going to be things like things like rare jewels become a little bit tricky. If you kind of have an understanding of some builds, or if you kind of get a lot of PMs, just ask yourself who would want to use this jewel, right? So we have max life, max mana, and crit. So this is going to be, a life and mind over matter character who scales their damage through crits. And getting crit multi is super valuable. So, I would price check this, and I would click all 3 of these because this makes sense. So a jewel like this is about 5 exalts, right? Something like this, about 5 exalts. Same here, when you have, things that can kind of line up like resistances, life, and then 1, roll here, right? We can check these. These are about maybe, 5 to 10 chaos. It's generally going to be things like crit multi or like 2 kind of damage types. So a good example, let me see. I had some burning arrow jewels. Things like having corrupted blood on a jewel is a very good example as well. But stuff like, life, burning damage, and then some resistance rolls on there. These could be like 10C, depending on what reses you have on there, right? I have fire, lightning. And if you get a 4th mod on there, generally having 4 mods is like really, really good on your jewels. 3, it kind of depends, right? With that crit multi one, it was life, mana, and multi. That is pretty good. But with rare jewels, you kind of just have to think about it, right? If you get too specific with it, it gets kind of, hard to price check them. So if we find 4 mods here, right? Attributes, mind damage, projectile speed, and damage with 2-hand weapons. I don't think all of these things go together. And if I price check all of them, it's like, wow, dude, that's a one of a kind jewel. It has to be expensive. There's none up. If I take out the attributes though, when I search for only 3 random mass mods, it's 8, 8, 25. What person is using mines that shoot projectiles while also somehow, scaling 2-hand damage? Stuff like this, these random jewels, I just let the market decide their price and whatnot. It's much easier to do that on all of this stuff than it is to, price check every single jewel. The only exception is when, you get a spam as soon as you put something in a tab, or if you get 2 people price checking you. All of this random stuff here, right? These are all super easy. You can use this macro here, and it even tells you the price of all the fragments, which are about 20C right now. A Maven's Writ, these about 105 to 110, depending on how fast you want to sell them. And a really great thing about this macro is that you can do stock here for these kind of fragment, currency, etc. items, scarabs. So I can search your stock, right? I have 15 of them, so I can probably get an extra 3 chaos on every one of my frags when I have 15, because someone will most likely want to buy all of them out at once. Another great example is scarabs. If you can buy a bunch of scarabs up, you can sell them for much more than the 1 at a time price. Rusted breeches, 1 chaos. If I have a stock of 50 of them, it goes up to about 1.5, maybe even a little bit more. Generally, I think these would be, the 1.5ers. These guys may get bought out, or maybe, they're just trying to price fix or something. Generally, when it goes, 1, 1, 1.5, such a steep increase, those probably aren't real sales. And if they are, maybe just get a little bit closer there. Another great example is fossils, right? I have a lot of fossils here. 84 jagged fossils. If I were to list these 84 jagged fossils up for 1 chaos, they would get bought up instantly. And that's because nobody wants to buy fossils 1 at a time. So when you've got 84 fossils, right? Some dude wants to buy 84 fossils, 1 trade versus 84 fossils, 84 trades. Imagine. It's much better to be selling things in bulk than 1 at a time. So 1C, 1C, 1C. But look, the stock is 1 to 3 fossils all the way down. When I do a stock of 84, it goes up to 2 chaos. I've doubled the money that I've had just by saving up the fossils that I've had, right? And this is another good way to make a little bit of money too. If you can kind of do it quickly, or if you kind of just set up a bunch of trade live searches. If I listed these at 1 chaos each, you could have bought all 84 of these, sold them for 2C, and you would have made an extra 84 chaos on that trade, right? About 0.5x. Now, that would have been pretty good for you. This is, the kind of example of letting things kind of pile up, selling them in bulk, and it makes it easier for you. You don't have to do so many trades, and you actually get a lot more money for it. But this is how I price check all of my items. TLDR, I just let the market decide. All right, I'll put it up for an X. If it's not worth that much, I'll bring it down until it's worth whatever it is. This is the easiest way to do it. If I get spammed, then I use my Awaken Trade, and I gave you guys some examples there. Hopefully that kind of helps you. With rare gear, it gets a little bit tricky. I should do a rare gear example. So, influence stuff is a little bit trickier to kind of price, but it's really not too tricky. So for example, I have max life and mana and a resistance on this belt, and you see we have a crafted mod here. Really, or you can have crafted prefix, you can have crafted whatever. Having a craft here just signifies it's craftable. You have an open prefix. So we've got resistance, life, mana, and this is important on Stygians. The implicit has 1 abyssal socket. So something like this, about 20, 35 chaos, something around there. But if you, do this craft, if anybody else wants that craft, it kind of goes up. But I don't like to search for the crafts. What I like to do is I like to say I have an open prefix to be crafted on. And so I'll do that exactly here. We'll do prefix, and we can say we have an empty prefix modifier because, we kind of do. So that helps us out like a little bit here. So about 20C, 30C. Now this works when you're not like crafting life, crafting mana, or something like that. We've just crafted some whatever on there. Otherwise, you can leave the prefix open, right? Like this has an open prefix, but crafted mana. So stuff like that you have to be a little careful of. But that is a pretty good example of rares and whatnot. Rares, you kind of just have to look at what's going to be valuable on the item. So for these gloves, it's just going to be their large amount of life and resistance. So we have 85 life and we have about 100 pseudo res. So that's about, 10, 15 chaos here. Stuff like that is really easy to price check when it's kind of just, some life and some resistance. Generally, that stuff's not going to be too expensive. If you have something that has really good mods on it, you'll just have to price check that very specifically. So if you have explode, additional curse, and attacks have X crit chance on a body armor, and if it's on a good base, right, then you're just going to have to look up your astral plate base with enemies explode, dealing, fizz damage and whatnot. It's going to be enemies have a chance. Oh boy, what is the new one? Is this it? Chance to explode, dealing, yeah, okay. And then additional curse. And it's much easier to do this from within the awaken trade macro. I just don't have one of these chest pieces right now. Attack, crit. Attacks have critical strike chance. And, you set the body armor, right? I would just click all of these in my awaken trade macro. But this is about what it would look like, here. Now, this is, enemies you kill have a 30% chance to explode. This is the T1, Super T1 Explode mod, right? So these, if you have something like this is going to be about, 15, 20 when you have the additional curse and the attacks. Now, it also depends if your item is having an open prefix where you could craft life, or, if it has this reflect fizz, right? This is something that you have to keep an eye out for. But this is kind of just, looking up things and seeing exactly where it's at. So this is, elevated explode here, as it has the ink area of effect. That's pretty cool. But it has a armor roll in its prefix. This hybrid, mammoths. So you can't really craft life on there. If we find one that has an open prefix here, or it has life on it, like this one, the price skyrocketed, right? This has a 9 life roll. This has 12. This one, it has an open prefix, so he's crafted life. That's pretty good. 19 exalts, and then you get a little bit of life. This one, nothing. This one is full. It's got junk here. This is the junk one with armor. And then you'll see when you get the open prefix, right? There's some armor in the prefix. Or when you get a good life roll without having to craft, the price skyrockets. So this is kind of stuff that you just have to keep in mind with when you have this influence kind of gear, or if you're doing something like that. Otherwise, uniques are really easy to price. You just do mana regen, right? If you can do the rolls here, this has 98 mana regen. This was the implicit, so you don't have to worry about that, right? But 98 mana regen, the lowest max mana roll, kind of sucks, but it's about 50 chaos for the almost perfect mana regeneration roll. Whereas if you were to just search these normally, 40, 45, right? So you can kind of squeeze like a little bit out if you hold Alt and have that advanced mod descriptions enabled very quickly. If you guys don't have this, I should have mentioned this at the start. But you got to scroll all the way down in your UI, and where is it? Advanced mod descriptions. I hope this is on default. I'm not sure if it was for GGG or not, but this is necessary. This shows your ranges, shows the mod types and whatnot. So I just hold Alt, and I get to see, the range of the rolls, right? 80 to 100% increased max mana, or mana regen. Stuff like that is super, super, super important. When you have corruptions, right? It's really important that you look for the rolls on your item if you have a corruption there. So Frenzy Charge, increased attack speed at 14. This goes for 14, 30, 60 exalts for just the Frenzy and the 14 attack speed. Whereas if you left this at, you know, whatever attack speed, it would go all the way down to 140, 1 exalt, 5, 7, right? So just noticing that you had the 14 attack speed roll on your corruption here in this specific example netted you an extra 13 to, you know, 10 exalts, something like that, just by having awareness that the attack speed is fairly important on cost breeze, you know, in other people's eyes, even if it's not in yours. Those are what the 14s are rolled at. So you can undercut, you can match price. It's completely up to you. But anyways, I hope this kind of helps you guys price check your items. I always have a lot of questions. Sometimes, you know, people are just goofing on me, but I do get a lot of questions on how to price check items. It is a little bit difficult, but the more quad tabs you have, the easier it becomes, because you can kind of just let the market decide what price your items are at by just letting them sit in a tab and bringing the price down over time. Someone eventually will PM you for some of these items, and if they don't, at the end of the day, I'll clear it all out. I'll delete everything, right? These 30C tabs, I don't know if I'm going to bring them down to 20C. I'm just going to start taking items out of here. I will not look at them as it's not worth any of my time. If these items were worth anything, someone would have PM'd me for them. So I don't take a look at any single item, even if it's influenced, as long as it was identified in a public 30C tab. If it's not worth 30 chaos, it's probably, you know, not really worth anything. It might be worth 10C if you have this enough quad tabs. You can bring these items down all the way to 5 or 3 chaos if you want, and you can do a bunch of trades like that. It just depends on how many quad tabs you have, really, and how much you want to do trading, right? But as an example, nothing in these tabs are worth anything, right? I take all the currency out, I take all the contracts out, all the maps and everything that could be, you know, a fragment or something like that, and just vendor it all, because it's not going to be worth anything. If it was, somebody would have bought it. All right, your junk's not worth anything. TLDR. I'll catch you guys later though on the stream. All right, bye.